We all seek a respite from the current, a shelter from the storm. But what happens when that warm place of rest becomes part of the storm itself? Does one get dragged underneath by the raging current? I mentioned in my last video, which was the haunting of the Shea family in Arkansas, that I had personally experienced sage working against a dark entity, and a lot of you asked me to elaborate on what I meant by that. The following story not only goes into detail on that in particular, but everything else that I experienced and what I would consider to be arguably the most haunted place I've ever personally experienced. And in all honesty, I still get chills talking about it even now as I speak these words into my microphone to share with all of you, because this was not an experience I was expecting to have when it happened. Please like, share, and subscribe, and consider checking out my Patreon and merch store links below. Thank you for your time. And now let us begin. December of 2023, I found myself in Appalachia with, at the time, were my two best friends, another couple named Bob and Brittany, and my now ex-girlfriend Megan. I was lucky enough to have been successful during that time and had the means to travel and explore the country a little bit. I had been visiting them at their house in Missouri prior to our trip in Kentucky, and we'd been conducting various paranormal investigations, spirit box sessions, and other occult-related activities before and throughout the time frame in which this particular event takes place. I feel like it's important to mention this because although I don't think it was the main cause of the haunting, it certainly could have been a contributing factor. We had decided to venture from Missouri to Kentucky, not only to continue our investigations, but to explore various caves within the larger Mammoth Cave system that spans all throughout Appalachia. Being one of the oldest places in the world, I feel like it carries its own kind of ancient energy, and this could certainly be why Appalachia, of all places, has such a haunted reputation, and being in a position to be able to step foot within the system itself, among many other activities. I wanted to see it all. Considering it was my first time not only doing longer-term traveling and investigations, but spelunking as well, I was nervous but excited. Prior to our arrival, Bob had booked us an Airbnb located in Nancy, Kentucky. Having had a long drive down from where we were in Missouri, but eager to explore, we had visited a few caves and spots before heading to our main destination cave. Prior to this, we arrived at the Airbnb, which at the time was called Roy's Place, according to the sign out front, to load our things in and get ready for the exploration that evening. The house itself was fairly unassuming. It was a fairly normal-looking house, all things considered. It was located kind of in the middle of nowhere. There was a large swath of land between any of the homes, so albeit people were nearby-ish, they were spaced out pretty far. The house had a wraparound porch and a white shop building that was located next to the driveway of the house in the yard. We first noticed things were slightly strange when, upon following the directions, which said to use the back sliding door to enter the home, that the sliding door, which led to a sunroom of sorts, was unlocked, and so was the door leading from that room into the house, despite there being a keypad with a code, because this isn't normally the case when you check into an Airbnb. Typically you would use that code to get in, or there'd be a key stashed somewhere, or the person would meet you there. So at least from my experience, I can't say that that's a normal thing. Me and Bob, who is ex-military, then swept the house, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. We thought this was odd to say the least, and messaged the owner of the property and asked if this was normal for them. They responded by saying that their mother lived nearby and occasionally cleaned the property prior to arrival, and that she had probably just left things unlocked for us. Thinking that answer was fair enough, we let things be, and little did we know that it was an omen of stranger things to come. We left the property after gearing up for our escapades, and had quite the interesting time to say the least with our adventure that night in the cave. On our way out, we weren't sure how we didn't notice it before, because this information wasn't listed on the Airbnb listing whatsoever, but there was a Civil War memorial located like half a mile from the house. And upon closer inspection, it was not only a memorial, but a mass grave and battlefield. It was dedicated to the Confederate soldiers who had died there. And besides the numerous graves, we noticed that the battlefield itself actually spanned up to and possibly past the property line where we were staying. Being a huge fan of history, I thought this was extremely cool, to be honest. I had never until that point visited any Civil War battlefield or graveyard or memorial or anything, so I was pretty excited to experience that. And it was even more interesting to imagine the battle itself taking place where I was standing at the time and where I'd be laying my head down to rest. We went and explored our caves for hours. We ended up going miles into a particular cave opening, and, well, it was interesting to say the least. After our adventure was said and done, we were pretty exhausted and decided to head back to the house to relax for the rest of the night. Upon arrival, as all four of us got out of the car and headed to the back door to head in, having had secured the house prior to leaving as well, we noticed that yet again, the sliding back door and then the door headed into the house were unlocked. Me and Bob sent the girls back to the car and decided to sweep the house yet again, feeling much more apprehensive this time, because surely this woman's mother had not randomly come back and left things unlocked again. Upon entering the home, we noticed that not only were these doors unlocked, but every window we could see was unlocked and open as well. The doors leading to the rooms were mostly open, and the front door itself was also unlocked. Going room to room following one another and searching for someone or a reason as to why things were the way they were, we began to notice some very bizarre things taking place. Now, me and Bob and all of us really have a good sense of humor, but pranks weren't part of what we did or how we vibed. As we entered the room where Bob and Brittany would be sleeping, which was the master bedroom, which had its own bathroom, we noticed that things were placed in different spots where they had been before versus our first sweep of the house. The mirror in the bathroom, which was a large oval mirror that had been on the wall, was not only off the wall, but it was laying on the floor, and it was facing upright in the opposite corner and to the left of where it should have been. That alone freaked us out because the odds of it falling and not shattering and ending up not only face up, but completely not broken in any fashion, like that threw our minds for a loop in and of itself. Then there were these decorative glass leaves that had been on the dresser, and they were moved into different spots on the dresser itself. And creepily, a statue of Jesus and Mary, which had been on another table, was turned backwards when it had been facing the entrance to the door it had originally been at, which was the position it had originally been in. At a loss for words, we vaguely discussed things and continued to look around the house. Inside the room where me and Megan would be staying laid one of those glass leaves on the pillow side of the bed where I would be sleeping. What made that in particular beyond strange is that door had been closed, and that was one of the only doors that was still closed when we got there and did the sweep the second time around. So that's also an anomaly that I can't truly wrap my head around because the door was closed. I mean, I don't know how else the leaflet would have gotten in there unless someone grabbed it, opened the door, set it down on the pillow, and then closed the door, or it was something else, something I can't explain. Within that same room, and this was the exact thing with a lot of other things in other rooms, the closets were wide open, and all of the everything that was within the closet, all the belongings, such as towels and blankets and extra pillows, etc., were all tossed out onto the floor, as if someone had dragged them out or thrown them out in a fit of rage. This was also the case within the bathroom as well. Being freaked out to say the least, but no strangers to the paranormal, we decided to go and get the girls and explain just what was going on. We hadn't found anyone, but something was just not right about this place. Upon bringing the ladies inside and all sitting in the living room together, we decided to discuss what was happening. We decided collectively to try and do a spirit box session to see that if there was something there, whatever it was, to see if it wanted to communicate. As we gathered the things from our bags to try and initiate the session, walking back into the split level from the kitchen area from the back entryway, we all began to hear a tapping sound. And to explain, where I was standing was within the kitchen area at this time, and I was looking towards everyone who had made their way to the living room. And I kid you not, and this is a promise, on the window above the sink, I saw a pale looking hand, is the best way I could describe it, and its nails were tapping on the glass. As soon as I could voice what I had just seen, that there was a hand there, everyone rushed over to see what was happening, and with a scream, me, Brittany, and Bob ran outside. We rushed towards that side of the house, and not only was there nothing there, but where the window was at least 15 to 20 feet away from the ground, because there was a descending staircase that went into that basement of the split level of the house, which was not occupied, by the way. We were also supposed to have full access to the basement because I guess there was supposed to be like a pool table down there and other activities, but that door in particular was not only locked, but it was like chained shut. And the basement door, which I'll get to shortly, which was basically in between where the living room was and the hallway that led to the bedrooms and the bathroom and all of that, was completely locked as well. And it was not only locked at the handle level, but it was deadbolted too. So there's no way that anyone could have been pranking us. It was quite literally a physical impossibility. Albeit at the time, we thought someone had to have been messing with us. I mean, Bob is he's a pretty tall guy. I mean, he's like 6'4", 6'5", and he stood where someone would have had to have been to reach up. And unless they were able to maneuver a 20-foot ladder from where that was and be pretty tall themselves, they would not have been able to put their hand up on that window. And by the time we saw the hand to the time we ran outside to see what the hell was going on, if there was someone somehow messing with us, I mean, we would have seen them running off. So after coming to this realization, we started walking back towards the front door, and Brittany saw what she believed was a person at the edge of the driveway next to the trash cans. And barefoot, mind you, it was really cold. I don't remember the exact temperature, but it couldn't have been more than like 20 degrees outside. She's out there basically in shorts and a t-shirt and no shoes, and just runs towards this thing with zero hesitation, only for there to be literally nothing there. Again, thinking someone or a group of someones are messing with us, we decided to sweep the property. And with our anxiety high now, we all three saw a tall, shadowy figure standing towards the back end of the shop building that I had previously mentioned was on the property. Me and Brittany then at the same time ran opposite sides around the building, thinking that if someone was there, that we would corner them and catch them. And instead, we just met one another in the middle on the other side. Utterly flabbergasted now, Brittany went back towards the front of the house while Bob swept the backyard. So basically, there was a little garden/backyard area that wasn't very big that was behind where basically that back door into the sunroom and then the back end of the house was. So he was back there, and where that was just a large open field. So if someone had been messing with us and they took off that way, with all that open space on all sides and no hiding spots, there's no foliage or anything, we would have seen them. I was standing towards the back door, facing where the shed was on the wraparound porch, and with no wind, mind you, the wind chime about 10 feet away from me began to jingle. And I don't think I've shared this, but I hate wind chimes. I don't know why, they just creep me out. There's something unnerving about them to me. And when I heard this jingle, I then looked back towards the shed, and I kid you not, I saw the same tall, shadowy figure standing there that all three of us had seen previously. I feel like it was staring into my soul, and it began to glide backwards towards the field until it just dissipated fully into nothingness. At that moment, I knew that without a doubt, whatever this thing was or these things were, that they were paranormal in nature, that something that we couldn't see was messing with us, and I wanted to know why. Heading back into the house, I convened with everyone in the living room, and they began to inform me that things had continued to move on their own accord when we had all been with one another or within view of one another the entire time. Still in semi-denial at this point, We even tried to contact the local police, but there was no one at the office. Like, that's how rural we were, which to me is a wild concept considering I've always had law enforcement available to me if I needed them. With items continuing to move and the mood being overwhelmingly negative and frankly pretty terrifying, Brittany ended up initiating a cleansing of the home using sage and sigils. Upon lighting the bundle of herbs, the activity seemed to kick into overdrive. Then, a massive series of bangs came from that locked basement door. Feeling a personal challenge, Brittany then drew a sigil onto the basement door and then onto the front door of the house itself and ordered the entity to leave the home. This whole experience was insane to see happen in real time, to say the least. I mean, this was, and I think aside from maybe one other experience that I'll go into another time as well, which was at the Sally house, has to be the most aggressive haunting I've ever experienced. I mean, the things that were happening and how fast they were happening were mind-boggling. Following this, things seemed to calm down within the house itself, at least where we were at. However, it wasn't the end. Knocks and bangs continued to surround us, but they all came from outside of the house or from that basement door. By this point, it was really late, like probably 3 to 4 a.m. from what I can remember. And what's crazy is that Bob and Brittany, who were well versed in the occult, certainly much more than me and Meg were at the time, decided to do, of all things, go to sleep in the haunted ass house in the back bedroom where the mirror, the glass leaves, and the Jesus and Mary statue kept moving, because of course they would. It actually became an inside joke between us because the Jesus statue in particular kept moving positions throughout the night. I mean, it moved, I want to say like a good 4 or 5 times, several times of which the door had been closed and we had all been together prior to checking. We ended up calling it breakdancing Jesus to make light of it all later. Now, those two go lay down, and I'm like, I cannot wait to get the hell out of here. But also, I was exhausted, and not wanting to lay in the bedroom that was meant for us, I instead decided to go try and doze off in the living room. Meg, who could sleep through a cyclone, was able to fall asleep. But with me, every single time I started to doze off, I got a bang from behind my head on the wall from outside of the house whilst on the couch. I then moved to the floor, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this. That thing knocked on the basement ceiling where my head was, and I tried moving it, I want to say at least 2 other times, and it would just follow me. And it seemed like every time I dozed off, it would just mess with me. It would bang on the floor or the wall or wherever and just keep me awake. Once the morning sun pierced the sky and tapped out from lack of sleep and my adrenals running on high all night, needless to say, I was ready to get out of there. I went and woke everyone back up so we could figure out another Airbnb to go to. We had originally decided a 2-night stay at Roy's place, but I decided to say screw it and take the loss on the second night because after messaging the owner and telling them what had happened all night, she completely denied everything and said that we were trying to scam her despite just asking for a refund for the second night, which we absolutely were not staying for. So how that's a scam, I can't do, the math isn't mathing. So with our bags packed, we moved to another Airbnb that I believe was near or in Lexington, Kentucky. And the vibe was entirely not weird at all. And the place, thank God, for the sake of my sleep that day, was not haunted. Now, what's funny is that we had booked the Airbnb through Bob's account on the Airbnb app. And the lady ended up leaving him a terrible review saying that we were crazy and we were trying to pull some kind of a scam, which is hilarious, mind you. But the irony is that despite this, and despite the positive reviews, which I'm honestly convinced are fake at this point, the property itself was delisted as an Airbnb within about a month following our stay. Now, considering how haunted the house was, the owner had to have known, dude. I have no clue how you wouldn't. Also, the Confederate burial ground and the Civil War battleground, none of that was listed as being attractions or anything. And considering it was that close, I mean, up to and possibly past the property line, we thought that was weird too. Now, I have no idea if anything entity-wise had followed us from prior paranormal investigations or spirit box sessions or the caves we had visited or anything previously. I have no idea if the haunting had anything to do with the Civil War battleground or memorial or what have you. Those questions I don't think I'll ever get answers to. But what I do know is that it very much was one of the most, again, if not the most, aggressive haunting or manifestation of the paranormal that I've ever seen. It not only was aggressive, but it seemed intelligent and calculated and unyielding. You know, I grew up in 2 haunted houses, which those stories I've shared in their own video, which I'll link below, as well as in my second book, which is Stories from the Archives Volume 2. And with those experiences, albeit there were many terrifying manifestations, they were much more spaced out. I definitely experienced what I would consider long-term hauntings. And this place, aka Roy's place, was something else entirely in a league of its own. And I've experienced a lot of other places since then, and this one still prominently stands out anytime I think of a haunted place. Now, those I've talked to about this story have asked me if I'd ever return, and honestly, if I had the time and resources and ability, albeit it's not an Airbnb anymore, I think I would, despite being so scared the first time. At that point, I hadn't been out in the field very long. I was pretty new to the occult and paranormal investigating and all of the above. Certainly not necessarily the paranormal, but I wasn't nearly as desensitized as I am now. So if I did go back, I definitely think I'd have a better handle on things emotionally and maybe not be as scared. And I'd definitely be anticipating activity. Now, I have reached out to everyone who was involved and asked them to share if they want to. But with it being the holidays and the fact that we all have different schedules and whatnot, it may take a while if anyone does share. And what I'll probably do is gather those testimonies of either Bob, Brittany, or Megan and basically do a follow-up video so they can share their perspectives on what happened. And hopefully I'll be doing that in the near future. So yeah, that was my story to finish up the year. And let me tell you, it's taken quite some time to come to terms with those experiences because they were truly scary. And I do not scare easily. That I can assure you of. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, hype it if you can, share it around, and if you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do so, and share your thoughts in the comments below. All that stuff helps me out a ton in this ever-changing YouTube landscape. You can support my work by doing those things and checking out my Patreon at patreon.com/mysteryarchives, and by also checking out my store, which has some new products for you to buy. And that's at mysteryarchives.myshopify.com. With all that being said, thank you guys so much for your time. 2025 was quite literally like the worst, yet one of the best years of my life, all at the same time. And if anything, it kind of showcased to me the duality of our existence as human beings. And I really mean this. Appreciate each and every single one of you, not only for your time, but for your support and your kindness, and for you allowing me to even have the opportunity to entertain you, and together with us all to be able to craft this beautiful community. I wish you all an amazing new year in 2026. And with that, this has been Cody here at Mystery Archives. Please stay safe out there from any and all negative energy or dark entities, and take care. I'll see you next time.